Hello again, Maverick traders, and welcome out to your currency room. This is Ankit here, and let's begin a market coverage. It's a Tuesday, September the 19th, 24 hours away from the FOMC tomorrow. So we got a big event, big day tomorrow, and the next 24 to 48 hours is jam-packed. So let's get into it. Let's take a look at what really happened in the markets today. Take a look at our broad market analysis, take a look at currency baskets, and talk about our opportunities. What's the best setup for the FOMC? Let's get into it.
Disclaimer. This video was created for professional stock and option traders. Maverick Trading is a proprietary trading firm that employs professional traders around the world. Our traders trade firm capital and keep 70 to 80% of profits they generate. All trades and analysis in this video are for professional traders only. If you are interested in becoming a professional trader for Maverick, click the Apply button in the video description. Let's break down what happened today.
So looking at the markets overall, let's take a look at the performance today. Let's just start with the news first. So here's the narrative of the markets right now. Markets remains range bound. So we are not really seeing markets breaking out big way either direction. We're looking at the bond yields. They continue to rise, but the dollar remain range bound. So there's a lot of moving parts to this market. It's not like last year where things were a lot more clear as the yields were rising, putting pressure on the markets, on a lot of commodities. But that's not the question here. So we had to really look at this going into tomorrow and look at it from all different angles. So let's take a look at where our currencies percentage-wise today. And you can see that it was, again, dollar is flat, pound was flat, but we actually got a nice movement in growth currencies, CAD, Aussie, and Kiwi. The Canadian dollar, we'll take a look at it. It had a CPI report today, but overall, it was higher a lot more, but has given up a lot of gains. But we have seen the Aussie and the Kiwi, they're not really falling apart. They're kind of holding steady. So really, every currency is kind of moving on its own tune here. So we just really have to look at relative strength and weakness rather than this should happen or that should happen. Take a look at the European currencies, Euro and Swiss franc. They are continuing to show relative weakness. Look at the Japanese yen, continue to show relative weakness. So this is where you really have to focus on, is where is the relative strength of weakness instead of what should happen in the markets. For the next 24 hours, again, dollar is flat. It's now giving us a good sort of a sense of where the CAD wants to move, the dollar wants to move tomorrow. So we'll have to take a look at it, really kind of sitting on the sidelines here. Looking at the broader markets, here we are, S&P down slightly today. It was actually down a lot more, but recovered a lot of its losses. VT doing the same thing. We are seeing the bonds. This is the only thing that is running into this. So this is really confusing because we are not really seeing a whole lot of effect on the S&P. We are not seeing a whole lot of effect on the dollar, dollar and the gold. Gold market also is sensitive to the rate expectation. Another thing to take a look at is the rate expectation. We are sitting at 99% rate expectation tomorrow that there will be nothing, no change. So where can we get the big move? I mean, that's a big question. Why the bond market is rising while nothing else really pointing out to, an expectation wise for a big change, or going into November and December, we are not seeing the big expectation for a rate hike. So we really have to see tomorrow's statement, what the Fed chair says, and we'll go from there. Looking at the crypto markets, you can see we are slightly up. Crypto has done really better in the last couple of weeks after reversing last week. So that's about it. It was still an oversold bounce, but in the short term, the sentiment looks positive. So let's take a look at our market outlook. So we are sitting at a 0 to a -1. Why? So let's take a look at the chart here. So we are below the 20 and the 50, and we are kind of going sideways. Corey talked about it yesterday, the setup here. We are in this little symmetric triangle here where we are getting kind of mixed signals. We're not really seeing a whole lot of clarity here. So this is where we just have to be patient, draw some clean lines, and see which way it does really break. Look at today. We did break lower today after reversing that and putting a little hammer candle here. So we really have to see, if the markets can really break lower. But at this point, the markets are not showing a whole lot of weakness as you would expect. as the bond yields are rising. So something to pay attention to. Looking at the schedule here. So we already had the CPI today. I mean, that was again how hotter than expected. Seems like a similar trend that we are seeing across. U.S. numbers were strong, and so is the Canadian numbers. So pretty much an increase across the board. As we go into tomorrow, we have the pound CPI overnight. Not really looking to trade that, but if you are in a pound cross, just make sure you are paying attention to it. My big focus really going to be is getting past this FOMC, because this is where markets kind of seems to be in a holding pattern. This usually happens ahead of a big event where we are in a holding pattern, not knowing where it's going to move, but eventually we'll break out one way or the other. So tomorrow they're not expected to raise rates, sitting above 5.5. Like I said, it's a 99% chance that they're going to hold rates. The big question will be the FOMC statement. With recent uptick in inflation numbers, the question is, what does the Fed say? So of course, they're not really making any change. They're just talking about it. They might just come off hawkish. We'll see how things kind of turn out after that. I mean, everything's sort of expected here. You know, those reports are already out. We already know inflation is rising. So this is where we're just getting a little bit of a hold up ahead of that. Let's do a quick currency analysis and take a look at where the relative strength and weakness is. And looking at the velocity scores, so the Swiss franc and the yen is the one that's showing most weakness. Outside of that, you can see the dollar, euro, pound kind of right in the middle there. We are seeing the Kiwi and the Aussie and the CAD outperforming, but again, it's a +1. So tomorrow, we are not in a +3 or a -3 environment, but we definitely need to pay attention to currency crosses like dollar yen and dollar Swiss franc as we continue following that momentum. So let's get into it. Let's take a look at the possible setups here and talk about what we can look for as far as the setup goes.
Do you want to be a professional trader? Maverick Currencies is the oldest US-based Forex and crypto prop trading company that will pay you for trading with our capital. Trade our capital and keep 70 to 80% of the profits. We are looking for traders just like you that are hardworking and motivated. Click the apply link on the top right of this video to see if you have what it takes. That link takes you to a 4-minute video that explains the trader position available, and you read a list of FAQs that answer pretty much all the basic questions you have at this point. After watching the video and reading the FAQs, if you're interested, fill out an application, then you'll watch the full-length recruiting video, and then schedule an interview with one of our traders. Are you our next trader?
So let's just start with the dollar basket here. And I think this is where there's a sort of a mixed picture, like I've said before. Dollar is going sideways. This is in the process of getting all those big inflation numbers last week. The US dollar didn't rally. But at the same time, the US dollar is not really falling apart. But we can see that the dollar is showing a little bit more weakness as it's getting a little bit more weaker here. But overall, if you go on the daily chart, you'll notice that this is just a sideways price action. Now, let's take a look at the bond market, because this is the one that's really puzzling here. The bonds are rising into this report. So what's the bond market telling us? Right now, if we go by the book, rising bond yields should be putting pressure on the equities. It should be helping the dollar to rise higher, and it should be putting pressure on the gold market. So what's the gold market doing? Let's take a look at it. Gold had actually made a nice run since last week. Remember, we had bad report last week, but the gold has made a big run. So, as we take a look at these correlations, they're not really lining up so well. So I'm going in with a bit more of right in the middle of the outlook here. I don't want to be shorting the dollar, but I don't really love the dollar long either until we break on this basket, this high of this previous high or a low over here. This is the area that I really wanted to break. I don't want to be trading this chop because that's where we are seeing a bit of a decision here. But we want to get in when there's a breakouts are happening. Now, That's the outlook. Now let's take a look at possible setups, what we want to look for on a bullish case scenario, and what we want to look at bearish case scenario. And we already looked at where the relative strength of weakness is. It's not as much. I mean, Kiwi is kind of rising here a little bit. So is the Aussie. But again, they're mildly bullish here. They stopped going down. But take a look at the price action in the CAD today. So Canadian dollar, again, this is a typical price action of buying the rumor and selling of the news. We got a bit of a lot of buying on this expectation, and we've got sell on the news here. So where do we go from here? This is still above the moving averages, so I'm not jumping in a short. But at the same time, I don't want to buy a long until it really breaks this previous high. But if I go on the daily chart, this is where you start to see that we are kind of topping out at prior resistance level. So these are the areas that you want to be careful. Going long, maybe the price action is already kind of priced in, and we'll probably have to just wait for the next set of data comes out, and that will put the pressure on Bank of Canada to raise rates, as they have mentioned before. So a bit of a selling on the news. Right now, I'm kind of paring back on my bullishness on the CAD. And if we make a lower high, let's say if we start to rally a little bit here and make a lower low, then that would confirm a price change. Right now, this is not confirming a price change. This is still a bull pullback pattern, but this is the area that you want to be careful about. So we can take a look at what the dollar CAD is doing, because that's one of the pairs that has been steadily moving lower. And take a look at what the dollar CAD did. It kind of flushed out and got reversed right here and making a little bit high base. Based on that, again, if the dollar stays strong and if the CAD struggles, I actually do like looking at the dollar CAD. Again, on a daily chart, you can see we just poked through the moving average and then kind of went up. You can see on a 15-minute chart, it's making a nice high base here. So I am just playing this range. I don't want to be risking too much on this. We want to be just playing that range, and we'll see how this thing develops overnight. But that's one of the pairs that I'll be paying attention to. Outside of that, let's take a look at the dollar Swiss franc. So dollar Swiss franc actually looking really good here as far as the setup goes on a longer term chart. Remember, I can't find a lot of good price action on a shorter term chart, but as you go out on a higher time frame, you start to see a little bit more clear price action. So daily chart, we are right at the resistance at about 89.97. You can see how consistent gradual price action is moving to the upside. All the pullbacks have been kind of bought out. You can see on a 15-minute chart, a lot of these pullbacks, they got quickly bought out. So dollar Swiss franc looks good on a possible breakout. And lastly, the dollar yen. Look at that. It is just sitting right at the resistance here. Don't want to buy it here. Remember, we want to buy it on a breakout. Not really have the setup right as of now. So we'll have to kind of wait and see what happens tomorrow. So those are the setups that looks the best. Lastly, the Eurodollar. You can see the last week had a massive week, and we're getting a little bear rally here. I like the fact that we got a little bear rally. We failed on this candle, so this will be another candidate on the downside. So these are the setups that we can look for on a possible dollar case scenario. So what about, actually last one is the pound dollar. That's actually doing the exact same thing, showing weakness. What if the dollar reverses? Well, in that case, we just have to pair against whatever is doing the best. I haven't really seen some of these currencies moving lower, like the Aussie dollar or the Kiwi dollar. But again, remember, they still look pretty weak on a longer term chart. But in a shorter term chart, they're catching a little bit of they're not looking as weak as the other ones are. So it's really hard to find a setup here for a short the dollar, but there's a lot of setups for long the dollar. So really have to see what's performing better tomorrow. I might take a look at Aussie or the Kiwi. But again, those are the setups that I'm paying close attention to. Remember, this week is a busy week. It's just not about the Fed, but it's about other central banks as well. So we just want to get past it. Want to see where is the market goes, because market has been stuck. It's not really going anywhere, and this is the time where traders can get easily frustrated with the markets because there's a lack of clarity on that. So let's get past that. Let's see what the bond yields do tomorrow. Keep paying attention to that one, because if the bond yields continue to rise, but then that will again still keep the dollar afloat and perhaps maybe put pressure on the equity market. But if the yields pull back, then I won't be surprised that the dollar sort of pull back and because kind of showing the underperformance here, and the equity market rises. So that is the focus here. So let's wrap things up here, and let's not do anything tonight. Remember, ahead of a big event, one of the big mistake you can make is just be active, look for opportunities, maybe lose some ahead of the big event. So we want to keep the powder dry, keep it fresh. Come back tomorrow. We'll take a look at it. So we'll be meeting live tomorrow for this. If you haven't registered for it, make sure on the calendar you can register for the class, and Corey will be taking you through the FOMC live during the session. So that's the focus here. Till then, stay on the sidelines and focus on the big move tomorrow. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening. Cheers.